Campi Flegrei, the awakening supervolcano beneath Italy. Imagine living next to a volcano so vast it doesn't even look like a mountain, yet it could one day darken skies across a whole continent. Beneath the city of Naples, Italy, lies Campi Flegrei, a sprawling supervolcano caldera that has been quietly brewing for millennia. Recently, this sleeping giant has started to stir, rattling the region with swarms of earthquakes and heaving the ground upward. In recent months, scientists have been closely monitoring the region due to an alarming increase in earthquakes, raising concerns about the possibility of an impending eruption. Could this be a warning sign that the sleeping giant is waking up? And if it erupts, what could it mean for Italy, Europe, and the world? In this video, we'll explore what Campi Flegrei is, its history of eruptions, the recent earthquake activity, and the future risks posed by this volcanic behemoth. Campi Flegrei, Italian for burning fields, is a massive caldera, collapsed volcano, just west of Naples, Italy, not far from the more famous Mount Vesuvius. It isn't a typical cone-shaped mountain, it's a supervolcano, an enormous volcanic depression about 12-14 kilometers across with 24 craters scattered around. Roughly 1/3 of the caldera lies under the Bay of Pozzuoli, part of the Mediterranean Sea, and the rest under Naples' nearby towns. About 1.3 million people live on and around this volcano, which is why Campi Flegrei is considered one of the world's most dangerous volcanoes. It has been active for at least 80,000 years and has earned its supervolcano title by producing some of the largest eruptions on Earth. It is Europe's largest active volcanic caldera. Yellowstone in the US is bigger, but Yellowstone sits in a remote park, whereas Campi Flegrei lies under a populated city. Scientists hope that monitoring it will help them recognize warning signs at other supervolcanoes like Yellowstone or Toba in Indonesia. Interestingly, Campi Flegrei doesn't look like a classic volcano at first glance. There's no towering cone. Instead, the caldera landscape is a broad field of gentle hills and craters. Visitors can find steaming vents, fumaroles, boiling mud pools, and sulfur-scented crater lakes scattered about, subtle hints of the magma simmering below. History of eruptions. Campi Flegrei's past is marked by cataclysmic eruptions followed by long dormant periods. 2 huge prehistoric eruptions formed the caldera. The first, around 39,000 years ago, was so massive that it spread ash as far as central Russia. This event blanketed areas within 100 kilometers in thick ash and caused a regional volcanic winter, even cooling the global climate for a time. A second major eruption about 15,000 years ago was also violent and helped create the caldera's current shape. These ancient super eruptions drastically reshape the landscape and demonstrate the volcano's immense power. In recorded history, the only eruption was in 1538. That eruption was relatively small compared to the prehistoric ones, but still noteworthy. In the months leading up to it, the ground rose about 66 feet, 20 meters, in the area, a dramatic uplift. Finally, the earth cracked open and the volcano erupted, throwing out ash and lava. This week-long event created a new cone, the Monte Nuovo Hill, and covered the immediate area in ash, though it did not cause widespread effects beyond the Bay of Naples. After 1538, the volcano went quiet, entering a centuries-long slumber. Even though it stayed quiet after that, magma was still present underground. The 1538 eruption sealed off old magma pathways with solid rock, so any future eruption must break through the crust anew. Campi Flegrei remained dormant on the surface for centuries while the city of Naples grew above. But that doesn't mean the volcano was truly inactive. Eventually, signs of unrest began to appear. Since the mid-20th century, Campi Flegrei has been showing signs of renewed unrest. It hasn't erupted since 1538, but it does shake and swell from time to time. Locals use the word braidicism, meaning slow quake, for periods when the ground rises and falls. In the 1970s and 1980s, the caldera had a major episode of uplift. The town of Pozzuoli rose about 6 feet in just a few years, at one point rising 3.5 inches, 9 centimeters per month. Swarms of quakes, over 1,000 tremors per month at times, rocked the area during that period. People were alarmed. Some parts of Pozzuoli were evacuated, but no eruption occurred. By the late 1980s, the ground settled back down, not quite to its original level, and the crisis abated. In the past 2 decades, the volcano has shown renewed restlessness. The ground has been steadily rising for 20 years, and earthquake swarms have been getting more frequent over the last 10 years. Importantly, the ground never sank back to its old level after the 1980s, so each new uplift starts from a higher baseline, inching the crust closer to a potential breaking point. One particularly dramatic episode occurred on May 20, 2024, when over 150 earthquakes struck in about 5 hours. It was the biggest swarm in 40 years. The strongest was magnitude 4.4, enough to crack walls and frighten the population. The swarm sparked panic among residents, and around 39 families near the epicenter evacuated their homes as a precaution. Thankfully, no injuries were reported, but it left people on edge. For those who experienced that night, it was terrifying. Many ran outside as their homes shook, fearing that something even worse might come next. This wasn't an isolated incident. In April 2024 alone, more than 1,200 tremors were recorded, mostly too small to feel. Currently, the ground is rising about 0.8 inches, 2 centimeters per month, actually faster than it did in the 1980s. This slow but relentless uplift has even caused cracks in roads and buildings around the caldera. What's driving this restless behavior? Scientists have 2 main ideas. One is that magma is intruding upward, shallow magma model, building pressure underground and potentially preparing the way for an eruption. The other idea is that hot gas and fluids are accumulating and causing the ground to swell, hot fluids model, which might lead to a lot of seismic shaking and possibly a steam-driven blast, but not necessarily a magma eruption. If the second scenario is true, the unrest could even stop on its own after releasing some pressure. Researchers are still debating which model is correct. As one volcanologist put it, if you stretch something for long enough, it's going to break somewhere. So everyone is watching closely to see if or when Campi Flegrei might reach that breaking point. Meanwhile, authorities are preparing for any eventuality. Emergency plans have been updated and evacuation drills have been conducted in the high-risk areas. The good news is that most experts do not think an eruption is imminent. After the May 2024 swarm, the mayor of Naples urged calm, saying there was no indication of an impending eruption. Many volcanologists agree that Campi Flegrei could continue rumbling for years without erupting. Not knowing if or when it might erupt, living in that uncertainty, is part of what makes this situation so tense for residents and scientists alike. Potential danger and future risks. What if Campi Flegrei erupts? While no one can predict exactly, scientists envision scenarios ranging from local disruptions to global consequences. In simple terms, the possibilities include a small eruption, local impact. The volcano might release pressure in a relatively contained way. For example, a phreatic explosion, steam-driven blast, or a small magma eruption. This could hurl hot debris and ash over a few kilometers. Nearby towns could suffer heavy ashfall and damage. Such an event would be dangerous to local communities, potentially lethal right around the vent, but its effects would be mostly regional. This is the kind of eruption that happened in 1538, and it's considered one of the more likely scenarios if Campi Flegrei does erupt in the near future. A massive eruption, global impact. In the worst-case scenario, extremely unlikely in modern times, but not impossible, it could unleash a super eruption like the one 39,000 years ago. This would eject an enormous volume of magma and ash, potentially blanketing much of Europe in ash. The ancient eruption's ash reached as far as Moscow. The eruption would eject massive amounts of ash into the atmosphere, covering cities and potentially disrupting air travel. If the eruption were large enough, the ash could block sunlight, leading to a temporary global temperature drop, similar to what happened after the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora, which caused the year without a summer. Such a cataclysm could cool the global climate for years and devastate regions far beyond Italy. The entire Naples area would be destroyed, and the world would experience a volcanic catastrophe on an unprecedented scale. Thankfully, scientists see no signs that such an enormous eruption is on the horizon right now. It is a very remote possibility. Even an eruption of moderate size, larger than 1538's but far short of a super eruption, would still be a major regional disaster. Hundreds of thousands of people might need to evacuate, and ash could spread across Italy and into neighbouring countries, disrupting aviation and daily life for millions. Of course, the best-case scenario is that Campi Flegrei does not erupt at all during this unrest. The current activity could gradually fade, as it did in the 1980s, and the volcano might return to sleep for decades or centuries. That would be a huge relief for everyone living in its shadow. But this also presents an important question. Can we predict an eruption? Predicting volcanic eruptions remains one of the greatest challenges in geology. While scientists cannot pinpoint an exact eruption date, they rely on various indicators to assess the likelihood of future activity. Seismic activity is one of the most critical warning signs, as increased earthquake frequency and intensity suggest magma movement beneath the surface. Researchers at the National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, INGV, are also monitoring ground deformation using GPS and satellite imaging, which helps detect changes in the landscape caused by magma accumulation. Another key indicator is gas emissions, particularly sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, which often increase as magma rises closer to the surface. Scientists use these data points to create risk assessments and issue warnings, but volcanoes do not always follow predictable patterns, making forecasting an eruption incredibly complex. Despite technological advancements, predicting when Campi Flegrei will erupt remains a difficult task, and scientists must rely on constant observation and modelling to refine their estimates. No matter what happens, this volcano will remain one of the most closely watched in the world. Researchers from Italy and around the globe monitor Campi Flegrei's every twitch, and civil authorities stay ready to warn and protect the public if signs of an eruption appear. This is why the authorities are working on evacuation plans for the 3 million people living near Campi Flegrei. Naples and the surrounding towns are designated as red zones, meaning they are at the highest risk. Campi Flegrei is both a natural wonder and a looming threat. The recent tremors and ground swelling remind us that this volcano beneath Naples is very much alive. For now, it's rumbling, not erupting, and everyone hopes it stays that way. Scientists will keep a close eye on every quake and bulge, and residents carry on with life while staying prepared. Someday, whether years or centuries from now, it will erupt again, as all volcanoes eventually do. But thanks to vigilant monitoring and research, we hope we won't be caught off guard when that day comes. In the meantime, this awakening supervolcano remains under watch, a powerful force of nature biding its time beneath a modern city. Everyone is hoping that Campi Flegrei's current rumblings remain just a fascinating display of nature's power, and not the prelude to a historic disaster. So, is the next super eruption just around the corner? Only time will tell, but staying informed and prepared is the best defense against nature's most powerful forces.